Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ghost in the Machine here with Victoria Rose. I go by Ghost in the Machine. That's my moniker. And this is one of the main subjects that I'm interested in. It's not really about interest. It's just like thinking about the future of humanity and how sort of all these things are coming together, and it's not for our best interest. And I just think, even though there are a few people that are seeing, how this is coming about, I don't like to be super pessimistic, but I have to just see the facts for where they are, who are the players who are implementing these type of things. And I think techno-feudalism, I mean, maybe we can come up with a term over this podcast that would better describe this after we kind of describe the things that are taking place. So I think techno-feudalism is good. And I think for those who don't understand what feudalism is, it's kind of relevant to like the founding of, so-called the United States of America, being that, the story, even though if it's a fake ass story, you know what I mean? They were so-called, feudalism was real in England, okay? And for those that don't understand what feudalism was, it was the lords and the serfs, you know what I mean? The lords being owners over the land, the serfs being, pretty much the peasants. And I think we have to understand we've already seen sort of this slow rolling effect to where the game hasn't changed. It's actually the same. It's just the titles are different, right? So they're no longer called lords. These are like corporate overlords. You know what I mean? And then we, the public, we're kind of like we're becoming serfs. Now, where the techno comes in, I don't know if that's the proper term, but it's where they're going to implement technology to make this even worse. So I guess maybe the title should be, I don't know, surveillance architecture or techno feudalism and the architecture. I don't know. This kind of falls under one umbrella. You know what I mean? It's a lot to cover. Okay, so we'll start small, right? We'll start somewhere where it seems innocent, right? Like digital ID. The propaganda forces are trying to, do what they always do, and they're going to paint it as a necessity. They're going to get you, the public, you, the serfs, to beg for the digital ID, right? So they're going to create all these fires, you know what I mean, over here and over there, and then they're going to come in like the firefighters, like they're going to put out the fire for you, you know what I mean? So we've heard this digital ID talked about a lot. They've slowly implemented this with the Real ID Act, which I have to have a real ID, right? And I believe as of this year, it seems innocent enough, right? Oh, if you want to board a plane, you got to be a true American citizen. Make sure you're not some, illegal criminal or nothing like that. Then you should have no problem getting a real ID. What's wrong with that? You're not a terrorist, are you? You're not a, illegal immigrant. You're a real American, right? Hence, real ID. And they'll probably come up with some lame ass catchphrase that'll, capture the hearts and minds of, midwits across America, like, a patriotic, the Patriot ID or whatever lame ass shit they want to come up with, right? But the thing about the digital ID, it's not just about boarding planes. It's not just about identifying you as a person. It's how all these, what do they call it? You've heard of the Internet of Things, right, Victoria? A couple years ago, this was a kind of a push, It's the Ring doorbell camera. It's seems
Oh
innocent
yeah.
enough, integrating all of these different things, your fucking fridge, was it going to be talking to you like the fucking Jetsons? I don't know, right? Introduce these things to you in a certain way, but then it all ties in. So, what is going to be the digital ID? Like, they're going to say during the COVID 1984 hoax, you know, they were talking about, medical information, integrating your medical information into some sort of a identification so that, let's say you was dropping dead from C-19, we got to be able to identify this person. You start to listen to what they were saying with that, and they want everything digitally cataloged, right? But it goes further than that. They're demonizing people on, on the internet or whatever, like the thought police, and they're sitting up there talking about critiquing your thoughts and how you think. You see this happening this year with like so-called prestigious universities, even, you know what I mean? People who are attending Harvard and Yale, schools that I could never get into, right? So it's very telling because you're sitting over there saying you were organizing this right now. they're just saying, okay, if you're not like if you came from a foreign country, then they're basically got the go ahead. They basically got the green light to be able to say, okay, because of the way you're thinking, we're able to deport you. But they're going to push that a little bit further, and they're doing it through monetary means as well. You know what I mean? They did it with the trucker protests in Canada, where they froze your bank accounts. Now, all this stuff, this is old news, 2020. We have biometrics that's been introduced into our society. You know, you have. I even had a workplace that I worked for one time, which I wasn't filling. Or you see stores popping up in different places where you use your biometrics. You know, whether that be your iris scan, whether that be your fingerprint or whatever. So I personally believe that they'll probably come out with a certain digital ID, and then it'll evolve over time. But I don't think it's going to take a long time for it to evolve. You know what I mean? I think it'll either be a real event that they exploit or a false flag event that they manufacture to manufacture consent for something like this. You know, they need right now a 9/11 moment in order to implement all these things that they have ready for the public.
Doesn't this relate to the thing that we saw recently? It's like RFK is trying to create some sort of autism database to like track people have autism. It kind of, I feel like it relates to the digital ID thing.
There's all kinds of things like that, though. You know, you got to look at him too. The thing is, anybody who's this is a separate issue. You know, anybody who's up there once they are compromised, you know, by the powers that be or whatever, they always change their tune. They always start marching to the beat of somebody else's drum, right? So I think that that's relevant. Ultimately, what is this? This is about mass surveillance, right? And I think where it's gonna go is an internet ID, right? So I think that there will be some sort of false flag that's going to encompass all of these things. You know, they're going to pump fear into the midwits of the American public in order to make them acquiesce to their will, right? So how would they do that? I don't know. If I had to take a guess, it could be like maybe not something as big as 9/11, but what are their go-tos of pulling on the heartstrings? You know what I mean? Troops were attacked at a base or something like that, and it'd be too perfect if it was some sort of like a Mexican immigrant or a Muslim, extremist or something like that. And there's going to be a cover story, and how could we have prevented this? If only we had known sooner. You know what I mean? It could be some sort of voter fraud situation. All these things are going to come to a head, and somehow they're going to justify it. But why is this problematic for the average American public? Because it is about mass surveillance and control. This is the surveillance architecture, right? And I believe that they're going to try to also tie this into like an internet ID, right? So once they roll out, the real ID to prove that you're a real American or whatever the fuck, right? Once they do that, because they're gonna have the so-called popular mandate, once they like roll out an incident or something like that, right? Then it'll be, streamed out to the public. Like also tie this into your banking information, your medical information, your internet activity, as if we're not already monitored as it is, but they want to cover all their angles. They don't want no fucking blind spots. You know what I mean? They want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to know how you spend your money, what you're searching,
Mm-hmm.
what books that you're reading. They want full control. And it's not like this notion of like I've never believed this like it's there's not some asshole behind a computer looking at your boring ass life. You know what I mean? It ain't like that. Now that AI has been implemented into this, it is they're going to it's like a mass net, you know? And me and you we had previous conversations about etymology, you know what I mean? What it means, and I've thought about these words like maybe too much because I overthink, you know what I mean? But I think about some of the words that we use, right? Like the internet, internal, inter, net captures you. You understand? So they've been setting up this fucking play for a long time. www.whoopdewhoop.com, right? World Wide Web, yet another web. You know what I mean? So you gotta pay attention to the words because behind words are intention. You understand what I'm saying? All the words, the communication casting, they're casting a spell. broadband, you know, all these words, they have meaning. Kind of going off on a tangent. It's sort of tough because there's so many things. It's something that I've never put out, but on your, I felt this would be appropriate time to like something that I've pondered. And you know, I keep shit to myself because you know there's a lot of talking about words, right? TikTok, right? A lot of people have become, you know, they're just opening their eyes. You know, they're getting the veil is lifting, right? That's why
Mhm.
TikTok has been useful. Now, back when during Trump's first administration, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but they moved all the data from China under the guise of, you know, we can't have Chinese having your data or whatever. Yeah, okay, that sounds good, but when they brought it over here, who'd you give it to? Oracle, another word that should be concerning, right? The company called Oracle. And what is an oracle? That's somebody who predicts the future. So therefore, they're data mining. They're data mining our data, right? To understand the mind. They're playing God, like if you look at it. Like this is spiritual. You understand what I'm saying? This is very
Mhm.
spiritual. They're playing God. They want to be in your mind. That's why even these companies and their logos and all these things tie in. You understand? So they went ahead and all our TikTok data as of today are running through Oracle and all of their data centers, whether they be in fucking Texas, I believe they're in Texas, maybe over there in Utah, some shit like that. But they're just kicking back. You know what I mean? And again, this isn't a person behind a monitor. They have this is what I think. You know, I'm not coming with no proof. This is just intuition. You know what I mean? This is just understanding how this type of stuff operates, right? Like being that they're using this web, you know what I mean? This they're drudging all this information up, right? And they're running it through an algorithm, through a system to put you into a category. I imagine, right? If me and you were in control and we had, you know, these empirical endeavors, right? Would we not utilize the technology that's currently available to do things like this? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I believe that what they're doing likely is probably putting us into different categories, right? Because this isn't like the Census Bureau, right? Where there's this superficial understanding of what you are when you check a box, you know, Hispanic, Latino, white, black, other, whatever the fuck. This is real demography. This is understanding what's inside of you. And the way that they do that is they filter it through this program, you know what I mean, that's able to sort of put you in a cluster group, a thought,
Mhm.
a group of how you think, you know.
Mhm.
There could be, I could be from this region, from a different national background, with a different upbringing than you, but the way that our minds work are a part of like this cluster. You know what I mean? Of course,
Mhm.
there's going to be nuances. Now, they're not worried about the fucking 89%, and that's probably being liberal. That's probably being generous. They're not worried about the 89 or 90 that they're already have captured through their propaganda. But what they're able to do is say they're able to send out all this propaganda, and then they put the input or the input, and then they want to see how effective that was. And they run these systems, and they're saying, all right, we've captured like 89% of the people. We wanted them to believe this way, we wanted them to think this way, whether it be via legacy systems like, you know, the mainstream news or Hollywood or Hollywood stars. You got to look at those as legacy systems. It's not like this hasn't already been taking place. It's just with this sort of technology, it's going to be that on fucking steroids. You know what I mean? Not only are they going to have the output, but they're going to have the instant feedback and they're going to be able to analyze it. And what's going to happen when they get that information back? Let's say I'm probably being generous. Let's say they're 89% of the people that got it sewed up, they got it on lock, right? Okay, they're going to turn around and say, all right, 11% to go. Like they're going to run it through some sort of a probability matrix. You know what I mean? What are their interests? What are they into? And they're going to push a tailored algorithm in order to reach those people based on their hopes, based on their fears, based on maybe their upbringing, religion. You know what I mean? And they're going to tailor it, you know, in order to then they'll probably run it through like I said, a probability matrix and then simulate it. Boom, and then put it out there in the real public, and they'll probably come back with 98% success rate or something like that. This is why these systems are so dangerous. You know what I mean? And a lot of these things, here's some optimism, all right? Why do they have all this information? A lot of this shit is fucking voluntary. You know what I mean? It's a laziness on the public. You understand? These corporations, when they came out, Facebook, Facebook is a CIA front. Like, let's just be straight up. You know what I mean? I've been abandoned Facebook a long time ago. I think I posted it and it probably got deleted or whatever. But when I dipped out, I let them know they had all this shit gamed out. And you notice a pattern with these people. It's always some bullshit story that's so-called relatable. This nerdy ass fool in his garage in Stanford, you know, came up with Google or came up with Facebook or came up with PayPal. You lying ass motherfucker. Intelligence groups that came up with this, and this is another thing I want to segue into. They are shifting this to the private sector. And why are they doing that? Because, you know, the Constitution or all these inconvenient laws that they might have to follow, well, they don't have to do that when they shift it to the private sector. So when, you know, Facebook comes out, you know what I mean? It's not the I think it was called like information awareness or some shit like
Yeah.
that, right? You know, a little too obvious, you know. And it takes you back. I don't know. You seen Scarface, like where he's like, "You want them to know everything you do, everything you say, man. I got octopus coming out of my fucking ears, man. You know, like tyranny, right? They had a cover story of a motherfucker in his garage or whatever their bullshit. Same thing with Elon Musk. Like this shit ain't real. These are like high-paid crisis actors, like in a way. You know what I mean? You believe Elon Musk is real? What's his story? Probably similar, right? I don't even need to look into it because I don't give a fuck, right? But these are like either they come from intelligence groups or they're just useful idiots, you know, like that Casino movie. I don't know. Any one of my old school favorite movies, Casino. They got that one dude, like he was a square, and they wanted to run their little crime through somebody, but they needed a front man who was going to be in his name, is going to be, you know what I mean? He didn't know too much. What did he give a fuck? And they had him, they were behind him while he was signing shit. These are what these people are. The thing about Elon Musk, bitch ass, is how do you even believe that? You know what I'm saying? Like, just as a commoner, you know, going to work every day, I'm burnt the fuck out after I worked 12, 14-hour shifts. How what did he start with? PayPal? Him and Peter Thiel, I'll get into him later, right? Relevant. They were just a bunch of fucking butt buddies, you know, some obscure college or some, you know, prestigious college, and they came up with PayPal. How convenient, right? Central casting, bro. This is these motherfuckers that get him out of central casting. So where did he go from PayPal? So he was just, you know, doing his thing in PayPal, you know, doing the damn thing. And then he what was his next business? What was his biggest business? Tesla. Was that first? You know, he's the so-called CEO of Tesla. And then, you know, in his spare time, you know, with all the hours you got in a day, you running over here, you buying X. And remember when he bought X, he was all up on Twitter, all up on Twitter. Like, don't you got a motherfucking job to show up to? Like, ain't you supposed to? Oh, SpaceX. Who got
Yeah.
time for that? Like,
Yeah.
now he's running the you know, the Doge department, like a man with many hats. Excuse me, a man with many hats. Like, what the fuck? Bro, I don't believe it. You know, people just got to think for themselves. Like, how do you have all that time to do all this? You know what I mean? So we were talking about the character that is Elon Musk, right? So when he's not in the factory, you know, making, you know, electric vehicles for the American public on a side quest, you know, running Twitter. And what is Twitter, right? This is where people air out sometimes their most vile self. You know, that it's not necessarily reflective of a person. I don't even go on there. I used to at a time, but it even makes you more vile too. It's like it's a that's the kind of atmosphere it is. But you don't think that they're clocking all that shit all along the way, all the little bullshit you say, you know, you criticizing the small hats. It's the thought police, you know, they're gathering all your thoughts, like, all right, I got your bitch ass, right? Putting you into a cluster, right? And I remember when he took that shit over, talking about it was going to be a free speech platform. Of course, it was going to be for a time to gather all the intelligence that they needed, right? And then when he did
Uh-huh.
that little $8 bullshit, you know, they played on the typical American and their America has become a place of not just America, but let's just say, you know, America's biggest export is fucking Hollywood films and degeneracy, in my opinion. But the people who wanted that blue check mark, you know, everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be a fucking celebrity, which is lame, in my opinion. That I personally feel that that's a curse. I
Mhm.
won't get into that, but you know what I mean? Well, fuck it. Maybe I will a little bit. Hence my name, because in a society where everybody wants to be known and seen and at the forefront, I have chosen to fall back and be obscure like a fucking samurai or a ninja and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like in the cut, you know, in the cut.
Mhm.
Because that's going to, in the future, you realize when you see where these systems are going, that's the best thing that you could possibly do. This is why I'm hesitant to even like. Anyway, back to Elon Musk, right? So when he did that little $8 bullshit, everybody jumped on the bandwagon, right? I'm gonna have a blue check mark. This is something to them, to these people. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? They think it validates them in some way to have a blue check mark. Well, if anybody who got eight punk ass dollars in their pocket can have a blue
Yeah,
check mark, well, who the fuck are you really? You know what I mean? You ain't
exactly.
influencing shit except for they now they got your banking info. Now they know who the fuck you are for real. Anonymous, any sort of that you had going on, like on your little Twitter profile, that shit went out the window when you paid that $8 for that little check mark. Yeah, you let that little blue check mark had your head doing tricks, right? For sure, I didn't pay that shit because I already seen that as a play. You know what I mean? As soon as
Mhm.
you gotta, when you was over there typing in your little, okay, zip code and you know what I'm saying, credit card number, yeah, they clocked your bitch ass. And then what did he go on to? While he's not, at the Tesla factory creating uh, Tesla vehicles that got a camera in it and knows your every whereabouts, right? Well, he's not doing that, or when he's not down at Twitter siphoning off your deepest fears and hatred to probably be utilized by somebody else later when they sell that information to somebody else, aka the government, right? To classify you, they got all the receipts that they need, right? When he's not doing that, he's launching shit up into space. The new NASA,
Supposedly.
the same way that NASA with their fake, we won't get into that, but with their fake ass Hollywood production studios, you know, X, or is that what it's called? X, X Studios, whatever the fuck that when they're launching,
Mhm.
you know,
Something
whatever
like
that
that.
shit's called. I don't even know what it's called, right? So he's doing that too. When then he's putting on his astronaut suit, sending shit to space. Get the fuck out of here. Who believes this narrative? Now, what other companies has he got going on? He used to be with PayPal and he wanted to integrate some sort of a payment system into X and all this shit. Big ambitions. Is this coming from himself? No, he's a fucking character. He's directly from central casting, like a lot of these fools are. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? So I'm just using him as an example. Mark Zuckerberg, and they're evolving. Ask yourself, as just a regular person with 24 hours in a day, like I got, where the fuck you got the time for this shit, boy? I want to smoke what you smoking. You know what I'm saying? Pass me that shit, like that masterpiece. Pass me that, pass. I wish I should have had that pulled up. You know that song, that masterpiece song. Pass me
Oh.
that, bro. Because
Oh.
it's not real. It's not real, bro. Ain't no one man on earth that can run all this shit at the same time. And now he's in the government, agency. I'm just using him as an example. There's many more. And earlier I misspoke and I said total information awareness was Facebook. It was some other bullshit CIA op, right? But the total information awareness was actually the prerequisite for Palantir. They changed their name. You know what I mean? And now Palantir, all this shit is connected. I may look like that. If this was 1980, I'd be that crazy ass motherfucker with the little strings connecting the fucking people. I don't give a fuck, if you look at me as crazy or whatever. This is just the truth. Elon Musk, bitch ass. was in a garage, according to Central Cast, according to the narrative. Him and Peter Thiel were butt buddies. Remember in college, creating PayPal. Just some regular ass Americans creating shit. You know what I'm saying? Just some smart guys. Bullshit. So where's Palantir now? It used to be called Total Information Awareness, and then they changed their name to Palantir. What does Palantir mean? Where did they get that name from? It's
Oh
like a
wait, I don't.
Lord of the Rings reference or some shit. I don't even like the Lord. I maybe watched it
Oh,
one time when I was high, but I don't remember a lot of that shit. But what I do remember is that evil ass fucking eye, like that evil crystal ball ass eye that could see
uh-huh.
the future and control shit. They named their company off of that. If
Oh my
that's not telling
gosh.
you what fucking time it is, then what the fuck? The CEO, whatever his name is, he donated. He was a big donator to Trump's campaign, but he put JD Vance's fruity ass right next to him in the vice presidency. Right, he was the big backer for JD Vance. Right, the biggest. I won't get into it because
Oh, interesting
Palantir.
because the
Go
Pope
ahead.
saw JD Vance and then he passed away.
I know, right? That was some evil ass energy. There was two evils meeting. They canceled each other out. You know that the state that cannot be named on their official account sent out like some condolences and shit. You know what I mean? Like thoughts and prayers or whatever the fuck, whatever the fuck they were saying. They sent out their thoughts and prayers and their condolences for the Pope. And then somebody must have hit him on the line, but hey, what's up, fool? Like, hey, the Pope, it came out the Pope was calling the whoever was running the church over there in Palestine. The Pope had him on speed dial and shit. He was checking in with him every day, which shows that at least he had some sort of a heart. Like, you know what I'm saying? Probably in his old ass years, when people start to see death coming, you know what I mean? They start to, grow a heart, like the Grinch who stole Christmas or some shit. I don't know. Once Israel they said, oh yeah, is that right? That motherfucker. Okay, man. They deleted the post. Well, what does that tell you, bro? Like, so the fact that he had compassion, ain't that his job to have compassion? Even if it came later in his life, I will give him credit for that. At least he was like tapping in and maybe sort of to gain some sort of a conscious when he's on his deathbed, so to speak. Palantir is a private organization, used to be known as Total Information Awareness, and they have their tentacles not only donating towards Trump, but donating. They put JD Vance there. Like nobody knew who the fuck he was. Peter Thiel, which he's heading up Palantir, right? He put his ass up in there. He told Trump, "Hey man, I'm putting his bitch ass in." And Trump, Trump acts tough on screen and shit like that, but he knows what time it is. He's playing a part too. So he put JD Vance in there. You know what I mean? Because these are like this is the tech industry, right?
Mhm.
So without getting too deep in it, because that would be a whole episode of what Palantir is doing, but I'll touch on it a little bit, right? Privatization of like the intelligence industry, right? This is why it's so scary, right? Because they're able to use, these private corporations like as shell corporations for the proper intelligence agencies of not only the United States, but like the Five Eyes, whatever country. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So they're able to operate outside the realm of the authority of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that you motherfuckers think that is, going to protect you, right? You are going back to your responsibility, giving up your information to these private corporations and thinking that, you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
they're going to, at very least, not give that to somebody else. So, who are their biggest clientele? Like, who are they working for? Who is Palantir working for? Well, none other than the United States government. You know what I'm saying? They got contracts with the United States government. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars of contracts with the US government. And they ain't selling cheeseburgers, motherfucker. What the fuck you think they selling? You all this voluntary information that you've been giving up on yourself, you self-snitching, bro. You know? So let's look at it, right? This is data mining, right? And
Mhm.
I wrote something down that I thought about. And this is just intuition, right? So let's recap, right? So they have the data mining. Palantir is not the only one. There's a couple more out of there. These are private entities, so called, right? But their biggest client, their biggest customer is governments across the world, tyrannical governments. US being one of them, the biggest, client. And what they're doing, think about it like this. They're creating a digital clone of you, a digital clone, right? All your information, they're running it through the system. And this is where you hear of things like Looking Glass, to where they want to predict the future. This is thought crime. This is predictive policing or some shit like that, right? Anyway, and they run these things. Imagine you have created a digital clone of yourself when you're out there in the track of the internet. You know what I mean? In the web, in the World Wide Web, in the internal net. You know, you have
That's crazy.
willingly given all this information to these people, right? And even if the company that you gave it to at the time is, not a bad actor, what about when they go bankrupt and some other company buys them up? When we see I think it was like 23andMe or some shit, and they have all this information, somebody can buy all that shit up too. So even if at the moment it's not problematic, it could be problematic into the future. What do you think? They just delete all that shit? Hell no. That's information is money. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So they have the data mining, they create a digital clone, and they run it through these simulations. Like I was saying earlier, they have these clusters, probably, again, I don't have no proof, but I imagine they've put us into these ideological clusters, and there's probably a small percentage of us who hence the name Ghost of the Machine, who are anomalies in all of their propaganda, who don't, succumb to their social engineering. You know what I mean? A very small percentage. What do they do with that? They treat us just like they would anything else in the tech world, as a bugs to be patched, as a virus.
When they realize that you're not going with the like box that they tried to put you in, they try to create they might try to create like a new box of like, oh, okay, this anomaly created a new path. So maybe there's a new category to put you in that box. But then when you break that box, they're like, oh, doesn't fit that box either. Shit. Like where does this person fit? Because I think the whole point, they want to fit you in some sort of category so that they can feed you the information so that you stay like addicted to their information, right?
Well, right. This is a feedback loop. I'm glad you brought that up, because so they're recognizing that, right? Okay. And where do they go from there? Where do they go with the small percentage? Being that you are always on your phone or whatever, and they want you to be addicted to this feedback loop, they're going to take your hopes and your fears or whatever the fuck else, right? And then they're going to tailor some sort of algorithm that they think they can bring you back on the reservation, so to speak. And it's not like this is not a theory. This is actuality. This is where we are right now. Whether it be ads or whatever, right? And like I said, they're gonna look for all the weaknesses they can find, all your blind spots. You know what I mean? And they're gonna exploit that. If you're a hardcore Bible thumping Jesus believer, guaranteed they're gonna find that as a weakness, and they're gonna feed you something that's gonna bring you. And again, this isn't a person. These are these systems that they have in place. You know what I mean? And if we're already there in 2025, see this shit behind me? Can you imagine where we'll be in fucking 2045? Hell, dude, this is fucking hell. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a part of this shit. So the optimism comes in your ability to find out what's important. Like, take your ass to the park, bro, or something. Like,
Mhm.
re understand who you are as a human being. This is why this is all spiritual. Back in the DVD days, I remember when I got this old DVD about fucking GMOs and shit. I watched that whole shit. Like, GMOs is old news, right? But the whole point is, it's not that, and I'm not going to go too deep on this. I'm just saying, it's not the principle of some of these matters that are bad. It's who's going to control them, right? Genetically modified, or like genetically modifying food, right? In principle, we've been genetically modifying food. Corn came from Mexico, came from a little grass or some shit, right? And we have been slowly, you know, when you plant something, if you've ever planted anything, you look for the strongest one and you're going to breed it with another strongest one so that it has these attributes. Or dog breeders could say the same thing, right? You want these specific attributes. If you're in a climate where there's not a lot of water, you're going to want to sit up there and take this plant that survived that sort of climate and that drought, and it's going to create this. So in principle, it was speeding it ahead. So it's not that science can't be used for good, right? It's is it being used for good? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not one of these people who are like not understanding that science can be used for good, right? Because this is coming from, you know, our human intellect, and it can be used for good. However, it's not that. It's that they were patenting it. Is they wanted to turn something in nature into a patent. So can you imagine in 2045 when it's no longer a banana, it's like, you know, owned by Acme Corporation or whatever like that. All the bananas on earth or all the oranges on earth. They are tokenizing God's creation. And that's where it comes spiritual. That's another conversation we can get into with sustainable development, so called. You know what I mean? And this is an example or where they're using a certain cluster of individuals who probably have good intention in their heart and want to preserve the earth, and they're going to exploit that and they're going to use it against them. The snake's venom is poison, but it can also be a medicine too. We're creating, you know, an abundance of food, for example. You know, being able that we're able to create like a tomato that can survive in, I don't know, fucking Yuma, Arizona. I don't know what the fuck, you know. But, you know, the sustainable development thing, what they're doing is they want to, this is all ties into, let's recap, digital ID, biometrics, internet ID, and CBDC, right? The, you know, cashless society type thing, you know, CBDC, right? Carbon credits and all of this. Well, what is carbon credits? They're going to punish you for just living on Earth. It's a tax on life, as if we don't already have another bunch of, and it's under the guise of we're saving the planet, but they're not saving the planet. What they're doing is they're taking the global south and they're doing what they've always done, is to colonize. And this is just a more sophisticated way of colonizing, putting in puppet presidencies or whatever like that, getting them to say, hey man, you know, we just want to save the earth and shit. I'm just a hippie at heart, you lying ass motherfucker. Once they get those countries into debt, then they're going to sit up and say, well, what the fuck you got to give? You know, what did you put up for collateral, motherfucker? You know, like a mafia. Well, you know, they want to tokenize every tree, every plant. This is wild, dude. This is, if you consider yourself any sort of spiritual, you should have a problem with this, where they're literally trying to be gods on earth. You know what I mean? To where they want to own and tokenize everything and commodify everything, which is given to us abundantly and freely. You know what I'm saying? That's for
Yes.
another topic. But this is an example of how they might take somebody's good heart and they might create that feedback loop for somebody where they think their heart is in the right place, their intentions are good, and they will propagandize them to no end that what they're doing, they'll fight hard for it because they believe in it, but little do they know the end game. Agenda 2030 and sustainable development. This is all about digitizing all that, you know, every fucking tree, and then taxing your bitch ass for breathing. Every breath you take. Isn't there a song that came up? Every breath I take, every step
Oh
I
my gosh, it's
make, you
called
know?
they're called the police.
Oh shit, that's even worse. The climate police. And they're gonna come
Bro.
under the guise of I'm trying to save the planet. You CO2 breathing, oxygen hogging motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Oh
That's a
my
fucking
gosh.
creepy ass song. That's like a song that came straight out of Black Mirror or some shit, but it's just real. Like, you know, damn.
Yeah, I looked it up. Carbon credit backed digital currency.
Oh yeah, it's real. We'll bring receipts. Don't trip. And the listeners should do their own fucking research. Me personally, may I suggest I don't use DuckDuckGo. That's for lames. I use Yandex, like the Russian web browser. Like that, I fuck with it. I get everything off. I've been using Yandex. You know, shout out Yandex. Shout out Putin. I see you, dog. You know, no, just playing. Um, no, but really, if you want to understand what's going on in your own country, you have to look at the opposition, what they're saying about, because they're not going to censor that, whether it be Russia or China. Now, I'm not saying China is like, China's way better than the US. I'm just going to say straight up. However, I'm not excusing them. No government is your friend. They're all going to utilize these technologies against you. You know what I'm saying? Some of these things are out of our control, but we do have to take some accountability. How much do we want to participate in this? You know what I'm saying? And to me, the way that I've been viewing life, convenience is a weakness. If you do everything for convenience, you're just getting soft. And you have to be able to, let's draw from history as a lesson. So I've told this to several people before. I love using this, historical analogy. The cavalry, let's call it, to not offend anybody. The cavalry, when the cavalry was, coming in, and the powers that be at that time were trying to eradicate the native peoples of this land. Um, they came to a dilemma. Like, we have the natives. You got nothing we want. What are you gonna give us? We got our own land. We got our own water. We got our own resources. We don't need you, bro. You know what I'm saying? So what happened? We had what? Maybe you would look it up, Google it real quick. 100 million buffalo roaming the earth freely, free food everywhere. All you had to do is go out and hunt. And the way of life was respecting life. You know what I mean? Don't take no more than you can take. What do? Kill 100 million buffalo so that they can then bring them to where now you're in a place where I need you for subsistence. You understand? This is one of the biggest tragedies in human history. You understand? Because a people living in abundance and that don't need you for anything, they're a problem. So the only way that they can bring them to their doorstep is by wiping out their foods, wiping out their way of life, because they use, obviously, the buffalo was for meat. It was spirituality. The hide was for the teepee. You understand what I'm saying? The bones were used as tools. So how were they successful? By creating a scenario where then all of a sudden you needed them. The cattle industry shouldn't even exist on Turtle Island. You understand? Because it was already abundant with life. There's no reason that you should be pulling up to McDonald's ordering a 99, not even a 99 cent, $10 cheeseburger, you know? So they did that to make them acquiesce. They don't want you to have abundance. This is what we got to understand. Why is this relevant? It's relevant to today. Just the other day, today and yesterday, up in Seattle, this is one of the biggest ports in the United States of America, fucking ghost town. Long Beach, ghost town. All this is by design. Don't you believe the political theatrics of this all?
We did talk about police, and we talked about demographics, putting people into categories, into clusters. Ideological clusters is what you said, and the anomalies in regards to this, especially with digital clones. And I wanted to ask, why is this important for the audience in regards to spirituality? Like, how does this all connect?
It's a good question. Well, digital clones, I mean, I don't even know if that's probably not in the dictionary, right? But um, through all these engagements that you have with our devices, this is something new. This is uncharted territory, right? So I don't give a fuck if you're on Quora or if you're on Reddit or whatever. You're pouring yourself out in some regard, whether it be the worst of you or whether it be the best of you. You know what I mean? Case in point, Twitter. Sometimes that's probably the worst of us. You know what I mean? We allow people to get on our skin. We sin, engage a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily define me. You know what I'm saying? You could, you know, if you looked at the ugly that we all said, we'd all be guilty. You know what I mean? But why it's spiritual is because ultimately let's look at what it is. It's like, if you think about the God of the Bible, you know what I'm saying? Yahweh or whatever, right? It's this omnipotent, all-knowing being or whatever that knows your hopes, that knows your dreams, that knows your fears, that knows what you're thinking about. And we're putting all this you know, unwittingly sometimes out
Mhm.
into it's not into the universe. It's into you know what I mean? Like this sort of AI algorithm, you know, unbeknownst
Mhm.
to you. So the reason why it relates spiritually is because if you are somebody, and I'm not saying that this is bad, you know, what's internal, what's inside of us, we all, you know, silently pray to God. We all let him know these things. And this could be, for lack of a better term, an antichrist in a way, because it's artificially taking all these things in. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You're expressing maybe sometimes your deepest emotions or your deepest fears, and you're putting it into this artificial um, intelligence, artificial system. You know what I mean? Ultimately, it can be used against you. And this is something that I've always thought is that another thing is it's evil because they are the ones who have, I'm speaking from an American perspective, right? I grew up in America, that's all I know. Like Babylon, you know what I mean? The
Mhm.
same people, the same entities, right? Without getting too deep, the same ones that put the sin in front of you
Mhm.
through Hollywood, through music, through film, they're the same ones that want to condemn you when
Mhm.
you have succumbed to their programming. You understand what I'm saying? How much of this is really you, and how much of this is actual social engineering? Um, I think is a good question that everybody should ask, right? And this is all relevant, right? The same people who are the head of let's think about it, Victoria. So like if we think about power and control, there's sort of like a trope that there's what is it? Washington D.C. is the they wear the crown of what politics, military, right? Washington D.C. is military. What Paris is what fashion, so called. Rome is spirituality, religion.
Mhm.
London is banking. You understand? Like these
Mm.
seats of these seats of power, right? Um, we kind of have we have that in mind, right? Babylon, right? So the way that I'm looking at it is like we grow like human nature is to mimic. I think we had a discussion about this, right? Like so a baby mimics his environment, right?
Mhm.
So when he's learning to talk, when he's learning to walk, he's looking at the adults, the baby's looking at the adults around them. They're mimicking their environment. You could even look at a feral human, you know what I mean? And see, you know, if he was raised by wolves, he's gonna act like a wolf. You understand what I'm saying? So the question is being that these people are, it's the, what I said earlier, the input and output, right? Everything that they've input, you know, in our society, America, we're fucking lab rats, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? So everything that I grew up with, there was I've always, I guess, pat myself on the back a little bit by not succumbing to the social programming. But if I'm being honest with myself, there were some blind spots. There were some things that I realized later, like, fuck, dude, I was programmed in this way. You understand?
Mhm.
And I guess why that's relevant is because they both introduce the sin to you. And then when you partake in it, when they present it to you, it gives that notion of the devil up on the mountain top, right?
Mhm.
Uh, even if we're just using it as an analogy, right? The devil on the mountaintop giving you everything in the world if you will just like worship him, right? So they introduce all of these this degenerate lifestyle here in America, right? And earlier I mentioned how they export this degeneracy across the world, our biggest export, right? So if we're viewing America as Babylon, right? And we're and Hollywood is a huge weapon, the tail eye vision, right? Um,
Mm.
getting into spirituality and witches and warlocks. These are some fucking witches and warlocks we're dealing with over here. There was a dude, you know, um, when you make a wand, when magician or what was it, when witches and warlocks, or in this case, what, wizards, when they would make a wand, magic is about intention. You know what I mean? Like I've looked at some books before, and I didn't buy them or anything, but just like at Barnes and Nobles, I looked at like, okay, what is magic? It seems like something major, but everything boils down to intention. Like you're setting off a green candle because it represents prosperity. You're setting this up, or if you look at a voodoo doll, this shows how powerful we are as human beings. You know what I'm saying? And how really, when you boil it down to, you don't need to read from a book about how to perform these rites, aka rituals, because ultimately, if you look at it at its core, it's um, it's intentional, right? So Hollywood, like these old wizards or whatever, what do? They use the wood from a holly tree to
Hmm.
make their wands, hence the word Hollywood. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So
Oh, wait. May I ask, how does this how does this relate to um, how does this relate to the magic in regards to AI? What do you think people should be
the
wary of or conscious of in regards to AI?
the magic of AI. Well, again, you're the same way that internally we pray, right? Like
Mhm.
again, another word that's weird as fuck, pray. What else is pray? There's predator and prey. When you're really like in your spiritual sense and you're thinking of these things, oftentimes in modern times in 2025, you might, what do you do? People are going to pull out their phones. Why do I feel this way? What we're giving up too much to this entity, right? And it's
Mhm.
gathering. Why it's spiritual, right? It's because it's this is AI is the combined human intellect, ultimately.
Mm.
Combined human intellect. You can take the most smartest people on the planet. We are feeding the system our combined intellect. You know what I mean? Our fears, our emotions, the best of us. You understand?
Mhm.
And the worst of us as well. And why it's spiritual is because like the programming that we grew up into, this what's the word, omnipotent or omnipotent
Oh yeah.
God
Yeah.
who knows everything. Yes, that's what it is now. This is why this mass surveillance and this data mining and what have you is so problematic, because um, we're feeding it into this system. How is it not spiritual? I guess is a better question, right? How is this not spiritual? You know what I mean? So I guess you get the sort of like, I'm only the I'm not saying I'm a Christian, but there's good reference points there. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
the, you know, Antichrist or whatever, or you know, it's a good it's a good analogy, right?
And
We're
Elon
feeding
Musk and all
all of
them,
this. Go ahead.
they
I'm sorry.
made it spiritual too. Like I think somebody even claimed that they were the Antichrist. Was it Elon Musk? I think he even claimed that. So he kind of put spirituality in the whole tech mix anyway.
I don't know. I don't know, but I mean, don't you feel it? Don't you
Oh
feel this
yeah.
is just like a spiritual warfare? You know what
Oh,
I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is everything is against nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, I mean, that's a good question, but it's also like, if you think about it, it's the combined human intellect is what AI is, right? And that can be used as something for good, or it can be used against us. And
Mhm.
I'm of the mind that it's going to be used against us. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But back to what I was saying, another reason why it's spiritual is because even AI and technology aside, when you come into life, we hit the ground running. You know what I mean? We got to play catch up on everything that's happened in history. We got to read about ancient Rome. We got to read about this and read about that. So we're automatically at a disadvantage. You understand what I'm saying? So we're only
Mhm.
going based on what's programmed into us or the available information or what have you. But why it's scary is because I feel like they're building like a god, a fake god, you know, artificial god. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm not against AI. Like I told you, I fuck with DeepSeek or whatever, but I'm always conscious in the back of my mind. You know what I mean? That ultimately this is going to be a tool that's going to be used against you. You know what I'm saying? And what does that do to the human spirit? Why is it spirituality? Why is it spiritual? It's because this is going to be used as a mechanism to demoralize you.
Yeah.
America, me as a man, just as an individual, as a man, I'm saddened. I carry the cross, so to speak. I don't feel right here. It's not just America. It's just like where I find myself in this life, where I've arrived. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's hitting the ground running. Um, I feel like I'm carrying a huge burden. You know what I mean? And in short, when I was young, most of my life, I've had such a fire burning in me, like fire being my spirit. I've had this fire, and this fire, this place and time that I find myself in, it's just slowly but surely just tamped down my spirit. You know what I mean? I feel like what used to be a fire is embers. You know what I mean? And my spirit has been crushed by the weight of it all. You know, that's a little bit personal, but I'm saying I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And why? It's because it's like information overload. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And why it's spiritual is because like when you look at, not to get too into religion or whatever, but it's relevant because it's like ultimately, you know, let's say since we're talking about it, the God of the Bible, you know, he condemns you for sin, but he introduces it to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is kind of like even in like Hollywood, this is like even in our culture, like we see that, right? Like I will give you the world. You know what I'm saying? It's like this. I guess the way we wrap our mind around it is like um, they introduce the sin, you know, us being mimicking this, right, as a part of the culture, whether it be, you know, it's pornography, it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's um, you know, individualism, like the cult of the self. That's what
Mhm.
America is. The
Oh,
cult of
uh-huh.
thyself, right?
Yeah.
Everything is all about you. Everything is about get the bag, get the
Uh-huh.
money, be a bad bitch. You know, everything that America is encompasses spiritual Babylon, so to speak. But the same devil who introduces you to all this sin is going to turn around using technology. Right now that he's he's put all the input using computer terms. He's inputted all this stuff. And then now, because this is normalized, we've partaked in it. Then, now that they have all the dirt on you, you know what I mean, that they introduced to you, mind you, now they're
Yeah.
going to condemn you with it.
Yeah, right?
You understand? So,
Yeah.
how could it not be spiritual? You know what I'm saying? Like, they introduced it, and then they, on the same, on the flip side, they're going to condemn you for doing what they programmed you to, what they programmed you to
Exactly.
be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Double jeopardy over,
Double, yeah, probably, yeah, double jeopardy. Like, damn if you do that. Nah, that is
well, kind of.
spiritual as
But not
fuck.
really. I feel like we are running out of time with this one. I did want to ask, like, how can people get out of survival mode when using technology?
To clarify,
Like
how
survival
come?
mode, like scarcity mindset or fear. Like, how can people release fear when they're using technology? How can they, like, how can we use it for good or in peace?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. Um, it's a great question. So again, I don't want to come on here to act like the technology is not bad, right? It's I could use a hammer to build a home, to build an orphanage. You know what I mean? Technology is a tool. It's about how you're using that tool. So I'll give you one quick example, right? So we're coming into an era, right? They want scarcity. Remember I mentioned that earlier about
Mhm.
how they uh, did it with the Native Americans is they wanted to have this artificial scarcity, or actually real scarcity, right? I guess it brings me back to, let me give some real world examples of how it could be used for good, right? About the intention. And we discussed this off the record before about the healthcare industry and how it's a for-profit business, right? And how they're not in the business of healing, but prolonging and treating through their, you know what I mean, sort of corporate structure or what have you. So again, technology, it's about who's uh, yielding that sword. And currently, the people who are yielding the sword have bad intentions for us. You know what I mean? And so one real world example would be, so in the case of healthcare, we, the American public, or I'm sure in other countries, whatever country you come from, our tax dollars fund these, you know, universities or the to do the research, whether it be for medicine, whether it be for technology, you name it, right? We,
Mhm.
the taxpayer, we fund these universities for these studies and what have you. And then it's used against us. You know what I mean? So let's take a look at 2025 right now and what's going on. Um, a way that it can be used for good is we can, what they want to do is replace you. You are the obsolete man. This is why it's problematic, right? I talked about demoralizing you, not only spiritually, but even physically, right? These psychopaths that are in power, what use do they have for you anymore after they're able to replace you on all these different fronts, you know, in the economy, right? Ultimately, they'll live like gods on earth. The monetary system, along with you, will be obsolete, right? Us as human beings, we've funded all of these things. It's human uh, invention is powerful, the things that we've created, right?
Mhm.
We could use robotics to farm entire farmlands and create abundance. That's what I was talking about, scarcity, right? So their goal was to create scarcity. And in that case that I referenced, it was real scarcity. Now, what they're going to try to do now is also pretty much operate on that same playbook. You know, oh, there's no products coming in for the ports. All of this political theater is ultimately going to get you into a sense of scarcity. You are the Indian, as my
Mhm.
good brother Russell Means, who I had the privilege of talking to a long time ago when I was a young man full of rage. You know what I mean? And he had a YouTube channel back in the day. I remember where he said, "You're going to be the Indian." He's trying to warn these people. All the tactics that they used against my people are going to be used against you. You're going to be the Indian. And it's very relevant. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but we found ourselves in a system, you know, of capitalism, you know, and how technology could be used for good. If we're the ones that funded all this technology, why can't me and you implement these robotics to be able to put it on autopilot to where it's watering the fields, to where it's planting the seeds? Once, if we were to do that, right? If we were to be the pilot in this operation, then we would solve world hunger just like that,
Mhm.
because we've already invested with our tax dollars into the infrastructure that could do such things. You know what I mean? But that's not what how it's going to happen. They're going to continue to have you in as a surf class and to work harder and harder. You'll never be able to. You got to work for your home. You got to work for this. You got to work for that. Why are we
Mhm.
in 2025 with these type of technologies? Everybody can have a roof over their head. Everybody should have food in their stomach.
How this relates to people leaving that mindset of survival mode of
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, having to get like certain products because they're making it seem like products are scarce when they're really not.
right. Okay, you can cut this back in survival mode, right? We shouldn't be in survival mode. Are you telling me? Oh, okay. I talked about earlier about how AI was going to be what I said, combined human intellect. Look at all the resources over the course of human history, and finally we've arrived at this moment. And it's going to be a tool that's used against us as opposed to free us from the toil, right?
Mhm.
According to the Abrahamic doctrine or the Abrahamic matrix, we're condemned for eternity to toil the land. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
yet we have this technology. If we could free ourselves and we could get control of the fucking ship, I'm not even saying we don't even have to have a revolution. Let's have a fucking renaissance. You know what I mean? Let's take
Yeah.
control of what we've already funded. There's no excuse why this technology cannot be used to free us. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's about who the people who are in control of this technology. You know what I mean? We
Mhm.
could use these robotics and all of this for good, but this is where there's, I guess, some optimism, but it's going to take some leadership. It's going to
Oh
take
yeah.
some bolas, some balls. You know what I mean? This isn't about us. This is about the future of our children. Is this how you
Mhm.
want them? Is this the environment that you want them to be raised up in? To where they're fucking everything is patented, like this corporation owns the orange tree and this corporation owns the olive tree. Where the fuck do we find ourselves at? You know what I mean?
Mm.
This is a pivotal moment in human history. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This came from all these inventions and what have you. I imagine that when the person who invented these things had a good intent, it's about somebody else came along with bad intent. This is where the magic is,
Mm.
right? So, yes, starting tomorrow, we could revolutionize human history if we take control of the ship. Ultimately, taking control of the ship is going to take overthrowing some motherfuckers, throwing them off board because they have bad intentions and they're steering us towards tragedy.
Mhm.
And at what point is it too much for us to handle? We've had cautionary tales. Terminator. How many do you need? You know what I'm saying? To where these can be used as weapons against us. So there you have it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the programmer, right? Ultimately, AI or whatever, any of these systems, behind all of that is intent, right? So we're going to have good-hearted people, people with the expertise that are ready to step up in all these different areas with the good intent and be prepared to take over the ship. That's what we got to look at it. We're below deck. You know what I mean? The tyrant, they're fucking pirates. You know what I mean? They've taken over the
Mhm.
ship, right? And we are going to have to break through that barrier and we're going to have to gain control over this. So
Mhm.
technology can be beautiful, but it's about the intention of the people behind it. You know what I mean?
Outsmarting the system.
And my grandpa, I'll say, kind of a quote from him, wasn't a smart man. I ain't gonna lie, but sometimes he'll say some shit that made sense. You know what I'm saying? He was heavily indoctrinated. Looked like a straight up Indian, like you know what I mean? Looked like a straight up real Indian, and it pained me to see how he was indoctrinated into Catholicism, and it's like his spirit was robbed from. Once in a while, he'd say some good shit. One time, he told me, "Hijito," he's like, "It's not." What do you say? They say in the Bible that uh, we lost paradise, but we didn't lose paradise. Paradise is here. We're the ones that's lost, and that was like profound. And that's the
Wow.
truth. We're the ones that are lost. We are in paradise. You understand? And this
Right.
is why you got to get the fuck up out your house, up off the phone, up off the internet, and touch grass. You know,
Mhm.
you got to get out there. Why it's spiritual is because look at everything that he's left us. We have inherited something great here on the earth, and we're the ones that's lost. You know what I'm saying? So we can utilize technology to not be toiling on the earth anymore. But instead, the way that it's looking is that no. Couple weeks from now, the headline is going to be, there's no ships coming in with product, and you have to work even harder. You're gonna have to pay triple. You're gonna be put out on the street because you can't afford your house. There's no reason for this madness. You know what I'm saying? So that's how technology can be used um, for good. We could use these intelligence systems to solve some of the problems that this plagued man for all these years. But no, as long as the capitalists are in charge with their greed, and again, this comes down to the fundamentals, right? Greed. What's it called? You tell me. It's been a
Oh, the
while.
7 deadly sins.
Tell me what they are. Remind me. Refresh my memory.
Oh, pride, lust, greed, sloth, anger, envy. Pride, lust, greed, sloth, envy, anger.
Is it anger?
Ooh, one
Pull it
more.
up. Write it down. Let's touch on this real quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I want you to do it. I want you to list them out. There's only 7. And how is it relevant?
Okay.
We got to get back to the fundamentals, right? Before we get too far away from it, I mean, we're talking about this, right? Like how the greed, right? One of the 7 deadly sins by these individuals, this goes to intention. They're using it for profit. Another word, right? We have profit and then profit. The reason why I kind of like that is because you're seeing it. It's not to confuse people, but again, I don't have it figured out. I'm just saying, like, it's been a while since I peeped game from that book. I think I put the audio book on, and like I was like going to sleep on it. You know what I'm saying? I would do shit like that because it was long. You know what I mean? But ultimately, what I gather is like when we talk about language, like first of all, the way that we communicate, right? Language and what have you. These different words are just on the opposite spectrum, you know what I'm saying? But they're the same emotion, just on 2 opposite spectrums, right? So we take a look at the people that are in control, and they're just operating on this spectrum. How do we just, like, if you imagine, just if we reverse those things and have it operating on the opposite spectrum, technology could be great for us. You know what I mean? They're creating scarcity. You know what I mean? Artificial scarcity through artificial intelligence. And then we can create what's the opposite of scarcity? Abundance, right? So this isn't really hard to figure out, but the reason that I mention that is because all this can seem overwhelming, but ultimately, this comes down to fundamental human nature. You know what I'm saying? Like these principles, right? We're only even talking about the 7 deadly sins. So how is this utilized against us just if we're going off that 7? And all we got to do is just, flip the switch to the opposite spectrum of that same principle. You know what I mean? So that's just greed. I don't know how you say envy. Oh, envy's used, right? Like how is technology used? It's in the makeup industry or whatever. Do you know that
Mm.
women, maybe you can pull this up, they are the biggest consumers out here
Yeah.
of first of all, they're the biggest consumers of everything. But secondly, what they're consuming is what you tell me, makeup products, this and that. They're the propaganda is feeding them you're not enough. And this goes into envy, right? We're going to parade all these people that are better than you, that live a better life. They're selling a better lifestyle, better looks, vanity. There we go. That's got to be one of them, right? Again, this is us like just off, off the dribble, trying to decode this. But look, something that you said purple. I didn't know it was represented by that. What is I've also heard that purple represents royalty. Yes?
Mhm. Yeah.
Why?
Crown. Yeah.
But why is that?
I don't know, other
Well,
than
how
the
do you
fact
get
that
purple?
red and blue.
How many colors
Blue,
are there?
not too many.
Not too many,
Blue
huh?
blue represents truth, I think, in a lot of cases. Red is like passion. It's like passion and truth, like leadership and protection. It's like combat and combat support. Shit.
Well, because like just when you thinking of just thinking about it, how many colors are there really? Is green really a color? Funny to think about though, right? Like how many colors we really got? And what is the symbolism in that? This is again talking about spirituality. I think it's encoded in nature. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? These are principles that we have to think about and read in depth.
Yeah.
We have to kind of reverse engineer some of this shit back to its fundamentals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Ultimately,
right?
a lot of what we're dealing with comes down to the fucking fundamentals, right? You name them. What is it? Pride, envy. What was the other one?
Yeah,
Lust.
mhm.
All the we're marketed. Let's say we just stick to the seven deadly sins. We're marketed that this is the input here in Neo Babylon or whatever the fuck, right? So
Mhm.
we have to like understand the fundamentals and talking about the solutions. We just gotta like do the opposite of that. You know, what
Mhm.
is the solution to scarcity? It's abundance. You know what I'm saying? And we have this technology. It's about how it can be utilized. And we sometimes have to get back to the basics. Ooh, we've lost control. The lowest amongst us are ruling over us. Dude, this is a problem. The
Yeah.
least the least among us are ruling over us.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's such low
Wow.
vibrational frequencies. It's not like it's really that powerful anyway, but because it's the power of belief, if we believe this fear mongering, then we quite give them the power. It's not like they have that power unless they can somehow grab our attention. And so we give them that power. But we're quite literally powerful, especially if we
Very proud.
just, yeah, if we shift our focus into things that matter.